Shabbat Shalom to everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many of you this morning, and a special welcome to all of your family and friends, Ben, as we celebrate this special moment in your life. The beginning of the Torah is marked with such excitement. We return to the foundational stories of our tradition: the creation of the world, Noah and the flood. Last week we were introduced to Abraham and Sarah, and soon we'll read about Isaac, Jacob, and then conclude the book of Genesis, Bereshit, with the Joseph narratives. Each story has so much to teach us. We often focus on the amazing lessons from each of these pillars of our religion, and then we gloss over the other parts of the text that are not quite as flattering. This Shabbat is no different. As we read one of the most foundational texts of our entire Torah, the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. We most often discuss this moment in the Torah as the incredible faith that Abraham and Isaac show in doing what God asked them to demonstrate their relationship and their connection to God. While doing this, we miss a key lesson in the Parsha, and in fact throughout the entire book of Genesis. Recently, I've been watching the television show The Bear. It's a fascinating show on many levels, but one of the episodes is deeply captivating. The entire episode, if you've seen this series, portrays the family gathering for dinner on Christmas Day. Unlike most holiday gatherings portrayed on television, this episode is painful to watch. Some of you have seen it, as it highlights the complete family dysfunction. It highlights that one family member does not get along with this family member. They cannot be in the same room as that family member. The meal's not ready on time, and it's a complete disaster. And it goes on and on. Everything you could possibly imagine going wrong in a family gathering is depicted in this one episode. While it's painful, it's one of the best episodes on TV because it captures human emotions and it's real life for so many people. The same can be said about this morning's Torah reading, specifically when we look at it through the lens of what happens in the entire book of Bereshit. Again, we often read this morning's Parsha focusing on this Akedah as a display of faith of both Abraham and Isaac. However, when we read the text carefully, we actually recognize that this is a moment of complete family dysfunction. You may remember the story. Abraham gets up early in the morning, takes Isaac and everything needed for a sacrifice, and heads off for the mountain. At the base of the mountain, Abraham tells the servants that are with him, "Stay at the base of the mountain. Isaac and I will ascend the mountain and make the sacrifice, and will return." But once at the top, Isaac questions his father. "Dad, we have everything. Where's the animal for the sacrifice?" It's at that moment that Isaac binds his son to the altar to sacrifice him. What happens immediately after this encounter at the top of the mountain troubles us all. With all the detail leading up to this monumental moment in the Torah, we would expect similar detail after this display of faith. But however, all the Torah tells us after this moment is that Abraham returned to his servants. Where is Isaac? Did they come down the mountain separately? Remember in the chapter prior to this, we read it on Rosh Hashanah on day 1. Abraham banished Ishmael, his other son, with his mother, Hagar. Furthermore, next week, immediately as this encounter ends, the first thing we're told next week's Torah reading is Sarah dies. Isaac there is not even mentioned as being part of burying his mother. In fact, Abraham and Isaac never speak again in the Torah. The only time they are mentioned being together is at Abraham's funeral. While the Akedah may be a great display of faith for Abraham, it's also the moment that tears his family apart. In reality, this is actually the norm of our forefathers. In the second generation of humanity, Cain kills his brother Abel. There's complexity with Abraham and Isaac and Ishmael. Jacob and Esau become arch rivals and only reconcile their differences later in life. And then Joseph is despised by his brothers, and they try to kill him. Each generation in the book of Genesis is filled with dysfunction. Perhaps the scene in the bear should not be so troubling for us, because we see the same thing happen in our Torah, and that screenplay would blow it out of the water. Abraham and Isaac seem to never reconcile their differences after the Akedah. Perhaps it's understandable, but after this generation in the Torah, something changes. The hatred and animosity that exists between family members is reconciled. As I mentioned, after Esau despises Jacob for stealing the blessing with the help of his mother, he wants to kill his brother. And the two of them make peace years later. The same is true for Joseph after Jacob favors him and the brothers want to kill him. When the brothers come down to Egypt during a famine and Joseph now is powerful in the Egyptian kingdom, Joseph eventually reconciles with his brothers and their father. While Abraham's family may have fallen apart before his very eyes, future generations have different outcomes. While I hope no one's family resembles that we read about in Genesis, I know most families experience tension and at times animosity. As many of us will gather over the coming weeks, whether it be for Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, or other family celebrations over the winter break, may we be in the same room. We may be in the same room with people we have a difficult history with, or perhaps a new tension will even arise. We learn an important lesson throughout Genesis from our families that are our patriarchs and matriarchs. You can choose to ignore the family issues and then sever a relationship like Abraham and Isaac and turn out to complete failure in a family's connection. Just like we saw in that moment in the bear. Or we can choose to learn from later generations in Genesis, Jacob and Joseph, and find a way to mend those relationships, reconciling even the most toxic of them. Remember, reconciling those relationships turned out very well for Jacob and Joseph. Perhaps it was the very weight they lifted from their heart that allowed them to accomplish great things throughout life. May each of us strive to live our lives without the burdens of anger, so that we become a blessing for ourselves, our families, and others. Shabbat Shalom.